one of our sessions from our 24-hour marathon of accessibility knowledge and interesting presentations. And this time around, we got Jeanne and Kathy, who I work with on the Mobile Accessibility Task Force, and they're going to give us a little bit of an insight into accessibility, what it means in the mobile context. And just a reminder for all the kids at home, if you want to send any questions, just tweet them to @Paciello Group with the hashtag ID24. And all the sessions also have live transcripts. You find the link in the description on YouTube for the video. And now, without further ado, please, ladies.
Great. Welcome. Well, hi, everybody. I'm glad to be here today with Jeanne. As Patrick mentioned, we're going to be talking about mobile accessibility today and talking about what we're doing on the Mobile Accessibility Task Force specifically, and trying to navigate what we need to do for mobile for people with disabilities. So I'm Kathy Wahlbin. I'm CEO and founder of Interactive Accessibility, and I'm also one of the co-facilitators of the Mobile Accessibility Task Force. Jeanne, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Jeanne Spellman. I work for the Paciello Group, and I am an editor of the on the documents for the Mobile Accessibility Task Force. And I used to work with W3C and did a lot of work with the user agent and the authoring tool, accessibility guidelines. So let's get started. Let me try to get the screen sharing going right. So entire screen. And present to everyone. Here we go. Okay, Kathy.
Excellent. So today we're going to talk about Beyond WCAG 2.0. Talking about new techniques for mobile accessibility, and specifically what we're doing for in the Mobile Accessibility Task Force. So just to start out with, the big question is always, what is mobile? What are we really talking about? Just take a second and start thinking about, when you think about mobile, what is it? What really are we talking about when we say mobile? And that was one of the first questions that we started out with in the Mobile Accessibility Task Force, is defining, well, what are we really talking about? Everybody's talking about mobile accessibility, but really, what does that mean? So mobile is technology that has typically touch screens. Usually it's smaller than a laptop or a desktop, so we've got different size devices. And today, if you think about it, all the different devices are different sizes. We can't just say, you know, we've got this size for a mobile phone, we've got this size for a tablet. We've got a whole range of different sizes, but they're generally smaller than your laptops or desktops, although there are some tablets today that are the same size as laptops. They are more portable, so typically you're lugging mobile devices around to a lot of different places. You might be taking it around in your purse or your handbag. It's easier to connect. We often have Wi-Fi or cellular connections, so we can connect very easily on mobile, and we can bring it everywhere. Typically, also, we're using it in a lot of different situations, and we're using them as handheld devices, not on our laps, typically not on a desk, for example, a desktop computer. We're not lugging that around to different places because it's too bulky, it's too big. We're using that sitting at a desk. If we're looking at a tablet, we may be using that on our desk, but we also might be using it on our lap, on the couch, or we may be bringing it with us. But when we're talking about a mobile phone, typically we're using that by holding it into our hands. So we're using mobile in a lot of different situations, and we're bringing them into a lot of different areas that we typically would not bring, for example, a desktop computer. So when we look at the kind of mobile landscape on the screen right now, I have a number of photos that are showing how we're using mobile today in all different situations. And really, mobile's changed the way that people are consuming information. So we may be in a coffee shop in a noisy public place. We may simply be using it one-handed because I'm carrying my groceries or my packages down the road, and I get something on my mobile phone that I need to interact with, and I'm holding it up and I'm now trying to juggle. Also, when we're in those situations, whether it be a noisy place or a public place or walking down the street, we're often very distracted. We don't have that same concentration that we have if we're sitting in an office at a desk with the screen right in front of us. We've got a lot of things. We often have split attention as to what we're doing. We're not paying 100% attention to the phone, especially if I'm walking down the street and I've got it in one hand and I'm trying to do it. I need to watch where I'm going. I need to watch the other people around me. Also, because we're taking them and they're very portable, we may be out in just bright sunlight, and that doesn't necessarily mean we're outside. As you can see today in my office when I was on the screen a minute ago, it's bright out. So even when we may be inside, we might be near a bright window because we're carrying them around with us. We can use them in all different scenarios. We might be out in bright sunlight, which means it's more difficult to actually see the screen sometimes. We also may be using our device without a keyboard or another pointer device. Typically, we're interacting with the mobile devices on a touch screen, so we're using our fingers. We don't have to lug around a keyboard or a mouse to interact with this. We also may be in situations where we have busy eyes and hands, like you're in your car. Your car is connecting in through your mobile. I can now do voice activation to control my mobile device, get my text messages, do all sorts of different things. So I don't have to use my eyes and I don't have to use my hands. I'm doing everything, remotely with the device. Also, I may just simply have, I might be getting older, and older users are using mobile. So we're not really saying that it's only for this particular set of people who are using mobile. We're seeing mobile being used across the board, and all ages and people of all abilities are using mobile today. So what is mobile accessibility? This was the primary question that was asked by the task force. When we formed the task force, we were to look at, what are the challenges that are faced by users with disabilities when using mobile devices? And what we did is looked at, the current WCAG 2.0, looked at how users are using mobile devices, what is different, what are the challenges that people, and really it's not just people with disabilities or people of other abilities that are having problems using mobile devices. It's everybody, because we're all in scenarios where we are challenged by not being able to see the screen as well in bright sunlight, or trying to use it with one hand. All of those scenarios that I just mentioned can make using a mobile device more challenging to use, and all users can benefit from having and making that device easier to use with one hand, or having a larger touch target size, or having very specific things to do and make it easier to use in a lot of different other scenarios. And if you look at the trends of mobile devices today, you'll see, if you think about it, a few years back or even just a year back, every release has new features and new functions to increase contrast, increase text size, personalize the device so that it can be what you need it to be. So what we did in the task force was to really look at, what was in WCAG 2.0 and really look at how that applied to mobile. And also, what are the other challenges that we, have introduced, because we've got this new technology that we're now using in a lot of different scenarios in a lot of different areas and smaller screens, and we're no longer primarily using a keyboard to interact with the device or with the computer. we're looking at using touch. So what did that introduce? So that's really where we came from in looking at, you know, what specifically is needed for mobile accessibility. But what we found was that mobile accessibility isn't just mobile. So we boiled it down to all of the key things that we're going to be talking about today. But it isn't just for mobile. So while we were talking about, okay, this is for mobile accessibility, the thing that we realized very quickly was, well, okay, yes, these are things that are very important for mobile, but it's not just mobile, because we have touch screens on desktops, we have touch screens on laptops, we've got touch screens on other home automation devices and other areas. We've got touch screens on our cars. So we've got touch screens on a lot of different areas. We've got different size screens. Some are smaller, some are bigger. And so we're not really just talking about these things applying to mobile devices, but they are inherent to the characteristics of mobile. So while we were coming up with things that were important, things that we should include and think about that will help all users using mobile devices, these weren't just limited to mobile. So today we're going to be talking, and we put this in context of mobile accessibility, but everything we're talking about today isn't just limited to mobile. It really does apply to all different scenarios and all different types of devices. And we did find that WCAG does apply for mobile. So WCAG was designed to be forward-looking. And what we found is that, you know, the things, the success criteria, many of the different techniques, all of that really did apply to mobile interfaces as well. But we couldn't anticipate all of the new technologies that are out there, particularly, you know, using a touch screen, using the device in a lot of different scenarios. It does pose some new challenges, and so that's really where we came to. So Jeanne will be talking in a bit about the work that we published over a year ago on some mobile best practices, but we looked at, you know, WCAG, and we did find that it does apply to mobile, but there's some additional things that we need to be thinking about. So the Mobile Accessibility Task Force is a task force of the WCAG Working Group. So we are, you know, a task force that's working. There's also the Cognitive Task Force and the Low Vision Task Force. So there's really three key groups that are working right now in identifying areas to determine, you know, what's important, and we're focused on the mobile space. So what's important for mobile when we're looking at users of all abilities interacting with these devices. And we're currently drafting new mobile guidelines and success criteria. We do have a draft up in Github, and we will be posting the link to that shortly. And this is going to include also new techniques for mobile under the existing success criteria. So as I mentioned, you know, WCAG 2.0, all of the success criteria do apply to mobile, but there's some, you know, techniques that we can include that are specific to using it on a touchscreen or a smaller device.
So last year, we started working on, that's a bad echo, at least that I hear.
I'm not hearing an echo, Jeanne.
Oh, okay, good. I can ignore it then. All right, so last year we started working on looking at the existing WCAG and seeing what things already existed in WCAG that applied to mobile. So we published a note last year, and I will, for those of you who want the URL to that, I just tweeted it under the ID24 hashtag. So what we did is we really looked at what we saw the best practices were for mobile. We did a lot of literature review. We did a lot of investigation of what other people thought were mobile issues. We did some gap analysis of guidelines that other groups had done. And we put this together as our first pass. Now, this is not any success criteria or guidelines. This does not replace WCAG 2. But this is a starting point of some good mobile practices that already exist in mobile. And then, if you go a little bit further, we have an appendix of every WCAG technique that applies to mobile. Actually, the slide says WCAG success criteria, but it's actually the techniques. We went through the general, the HTML, the scripting, the failure techniques, and put everything together. Now, we put it as a temporary document on the W3C page, but our intention is that this will become a filter in the new WCAG Quick Ref. For those of you who saw Shadi Abuzara's presentation a few hours ago, he was showing the new Quick Ref with all of the new filtering options, and we hope that soon mobile will be one of those options that you'll be able to immediately see all the techniques. So we're pretty excited about that. But for the meantime, if you look at the appendix in the 2015 note, you will get a link to this page. And I'll tweet it later. But this year, we got to the good stuff because we started looking at what's beyond existing in WCAG 2.0. And we have an early editor's draft. I have a screenshot up here of what we're at the moment calling the Mobile Accessibility Best Practices. A few months ago, we were calling it the Mobile Accessibility Extension. But there is some exciting work going on in the WCAG Working Group, and people are looking at the possibility of producing a WCAG 2.1, which I'm really thrilled about. I'm very excited. And it looks like the work that we're doing here will become part of a WCAG 2.1. Now, none of this is set in stone. This is all still in the discussion phase. None of it is finalized, but it's exciting that it's starting to happen. So, take a look at some of what we're doing. I want to note that this does not replace WCAG 2.0. WCAG 2.0 will never go away, but we are looking at a possibility of a WCAG 2.1, which people can choose to conform to. It's not forcing everyone to change their websites. The other thing to note on this is that we put in some temporary numbering because we needed to number things so we knew what we were working on. But keep in mind that this numbering is probably going to change. So our new document, which we're currently calling the Mobile Accessibility Best Practices, it's going to contain guidelines and success criteria for mobile web, for hybrid apps, and maybe even for mobile apps. We have to do some negotiating with the WCAG Working Group for that because the definition of web content doesn't currently include mobile apps, but we hope that's going to change. So we've also written the understanding section for each of these guidelines and success criteria and techniques for most of them. We have them all in one document right now for convenience sake, but they'll eventually be split out and set up the way WCAG does. So this is our structure, and again, this may change. We have an outline of the current WCAG with mobile techniques that apply to the WCAG success criteria. So we kind of slotted in new mobile techniques into the existing WCAG success criteria, and we tried to make that obvious in the new document. And then we added the new guidelines and success criteria for mobile. So here's a sample of our table of contents. And you can see on 2.5, which of course doesn't exist in the current WCAG, that's our proposed new mobile guideline for touch and pointer. We also are proposing a 2.6 for making it easier to use the physical features of the phone, 2.7 for speech input, and we have some new ones also in understandable, and we're going to talk about all of these in detail, so I won't go into it too much. Okay, Kathy?
Wonderful. So one of the exciting things that we've done is we now have a editor of the touch and pointer accessibility. So this is out right now for the WCAG Working Group to review. It is publicly available. We are looking for comments on this. But this is going into specific guidelines that are important to think about for touch interfaces and also for pointer interfaces, which right now WCAG is the guidelines are structured around keyboard. So this is extending it further to touch and pointer interfaces. Go ahead, Jeanne.
I'm doing too many things at once. Tweet at the same time. So the first guideline is for touch and pointer. Make it easier for users to operate touch and pointer functionality. So we also have an intent for this, which is that devices such as mobile devices are designed to be primarily operated via gestures made on a touch screen. Mobile device design has evolved away from built-in physical keyboards like the fixed and slide-out keyboards that we originally had on smartphone or pre-smartphones, and moving toward devices that maximize the touchscreen area and display an on-screen keyboard only when the user has selected a user interface control that accepts touch text input like a text box. So this was a very different paradigm from the old ways that phones were used, and it's certainly a very different paradigm from desktop.
So the first proposed success criterion is all about touch. It says touch, all functions available by touch are still available by touch after the platform assistive technology that remaps the touch gestures is turned on. This success criterion came from the fact that the touch gestures that you use with a screen reader or other assistive technology, but primarily screen readers for now, changes when you turn on the screen reader. So the touch gestures change when you use the screen reader. So we want to make sure that all functions that can be done with touch when for example, a screen reader is not turned on can still work and function, maybe using different gestures, but still these functions are available when the assistive technology is turned on. And keep in mind that we're not talking about all assistive technology, but we're talking about the assistive technology that is available on the actual mobile device. So it's built into the platform. So platform assistive technology is the key term here, and we will be defining that specifically. And it also is specific to any assistive technology that remaps the touch gestures. So if you can do, when you turn on that assistive technology, if it changes the touch gestures, then you need to make sure that all of these functions are still available with touch. And we have a number of techniques as well as some proposed failures for this. Right now, we've just outlined what the titles are for these. Once we get feedback from the WCAG Working Group, we will be working on actually building out each of these techniques and failures if it is approved by the working group. So right now, under the techniques, we have using standard one-touch controls. We've got providing touch access for custom controls, and we've got two failures. The infinite scroll gesture is not available with the system screen reader, and also can be open but cannot be closed when touch when the screen reader is running. So we've got those four kind of two techniques and two failures for this success criteria.
The next area we worked on was no touch trap. So this is really the equivalent of the WCAG no keyboard trap moved to the touch screen arena. And hopefully, at some point, we will work on the original. We have a proposal that when we actually start working on a WCAG 2.1, that we will look at making this called no navigation trap and merge the two. But then there's also some discussion about keeping them separate. So this, as I say, with all of this, it may change. But first one we're looking at, so when touch input behavior is modified by the platform assistive technology. In other words, when assistive technology is turned on and the gestures are different. So focus can be moved to a component on the page, like with a swipe right. Then focus can be moved back to the main content without starting someone back at the top of the page again. So either you have the ability to use a standard gesture to move back, or you can have a custom gesture, but you have to advise the user of what that custom gesture is. And we do have a failure written for this, which is that a component can be opened but cannot be closed with touch when a system screen reader is running.
This next proposed success criterion is one that we went back and forth on and probably quite a few times. This one is accidental activation, and really bottom line is we want to help avoid users accidentally activating an element on the screen by just hovering over or tapping when you first initially touch that element. And so what we're looking at, this one is talking about for single touch and pointer activation, at least one of the following is true. Activation is on the up event. For example, if I touch the screen, I don't activate that element until my finger leaves the screen. So touching down on something doesn't activate something, but touching up does. There are some scenarios where you may need to have things activated on a touch down, and there we've got several different options. We can have a confirmation alert. You can have an undo or other mechanism to allow user to reverse the action, or you could have a setting, for example, that allows the user to choose whether or not activation happens. So really what we're looking at here is, in an ideal situation, you're not activating an element until you actually leave the screen, so it's on the up event, but in cases where that's not possible, then we can activate the element with these other conditions. And this is really helping users, be able to recover from hitting the wrong target, helping them avoid accidentally going to something or a change of context just by touching something. So really giving the user control and making sure that they're not accidentally going to activate an element by simply touching the screen.
This is my current favorite. We're talking about target size. So, in other words, the size of a button or an element on the screen that people can interact with. So the size of this target in relation to the visible display is at least 44 pixels by 44 pixels for the touch screen. Now, one of the other things we just started talking about in the last few weeks is that we also wanted to think about stylus and mouse, which has a different, it has a more precise pointer effect. And so that we wanted to consider having a smaller size for the mouse or stylus or some form of pointer. Now, we still are having a lot of discussion about this. I would like to point out that the pixel here is a CSS pixel, and Patrick could, we can talk about this a lot more when we get to the questions if we want, but
I'm saying nothing.
we have we've been doing having a lot of conversation about this because it's a serious issue. What is a pixel? And pixels mean different things in different contexts. So we have settled for now that a pixel is defined as a CSS pixel, and that we're looking at the numbers 44 by 44 and 20 by 20. We're not fixed on these yet. We're certainly very interested in public input on these issues. And we do have one technique ready, which is multiple elements. And whoops. When multiple elements perform the same action or go to the same destination, like a link icon with link text, these should be contained within the same actionable element. And that's pretty standard stuff. But we are, the actual sizes are not fixed yet, and we are definitely interested in public input.
This new proposed guideline is all about physical features of the phone. We want to make it easier to use the physical features that are built into the device. And this is an area where we haven't done a lot of work yet in really defining all of the success criteria and really what's there. This is going to be coming later this year. But we have, it's definitely something that we need to think about and really identify what these key areas are that we need to concentrate on. Right now we've got one success criteria that we've outlined, and that's all around device manipulation. Because mobile devices have a number of different sensors, for example, you can tilt your device and it can do something. For example, some applications today, you can tilt the device and it actually scrolls. So you can actually do device manipulation in order to activate or perform some sort of action. Because some users cannot manipulate the device, it's going to be important to make sure that this is available using other methods as well as device manipulation. So you can still use device manipulation, but you need to make sure that those functions and features are still available if you can't do that particular action. So device manipulation success criteria says when device manipulation gestures are provided, touch and keyboard operable alternatives, alternative controls options are available. So we want to make sure that no matter what it is, this could be use of the camera, it could be use of voice, it could be use of the different sensors, so the tiltrometer, everything in there. And this is an area that we're looking at because mobile devices today have so many different features and functions, and those are good things. Those are things that are making it easier, giving users other options to interact. So that you've got a lot of different preferences, but it does pose some challenges to users who may not be able to do a particular device manipulation.
Another area we're working on that's certainly not exclusive to mobile is speech input. There are a number of people who operate their mobile devices and their desktop devices solely by voice input. So we want to make it more practical for them to operate all functionality. We don't have a lot of this done yet, but this is some of the early drafts of what we're thinking about. So for speech input is we want to say that all functionality of the content, including touch and gesture, is operable through the keyboard and does not obstruct the user's ability to access the keyboard commands through speech input. And certainly navigation right now on mobile devices is much more of a challenge for speech input users. So we want to address that with this first success criteria. One of the other areas that we know is a very big challenge for speech input users is the number of web applications that are set up with single key shortcuts. So if you just can hit a I to get your inbox listing, or D to delete an email on a web app, and you're a speech input user, you can accidentally start navigating and deleting your email just by trying to dictate a message. So that single key shortcut is very dangerous for speech input users, and they need to be able to turn that off or adjust it to an alternative string, a string of symbols and letters.
Another thing that's really important is thinking about how users are actually using their devices. Because my mobile devices are portable, we often have them in our hand. It's very easy to switch from portrait mode to landscape mode in looking at your device, whether that be your phone or your tablet. You can do that on monitors today. You can have your monitor in portrait, you can have it in landscape, but it's not as easy and as to do as it is on a mobile device. I can easily switch back and forth within a couple seconds when I'm on a mobile device versus if I'm on a desktop computer with monitors. And so one of the things that we took a look at is really what's important. What does that change? What are the challenges if we can switch from one orientation to the next? And when we looked at kind of the user needs as far as device orientations, there are some users who need to lock in their device in a particular orientation. They may have it on their wheelchair, for example, and it's not easy to switch from portrait to landscape mode, and they're using their device in a particular orientation. So this new guideline is all about making sure that it's content's usable in the different device orientations, and we've got one draft success criteria that we're actually finalizing in a couple hours during our next meeting. And that's all about orientation. It says orientation of the content is not locked to landscape or portrait except where the orientation is essential. So we will have an exception in here because there are scenarios where you do need to have a particular orientation. But the idea here is to allow users to view the content in each orientation, but that you don't need to necessarily have it look a specific way, but we need to be able to make sure that it's not locked into landscape or portrait mode.
Another one that I actually, I'm glad I got this slide because I ran into this morning, is we want to make sure that interactive elements are distinguishable. And I was trying to update the Apple Watch app this morning, and I could not find the install button. I'm looking and looking at this app, and I could not find the install button. And finally, I just clicked on a headline that said install and had directions under it, and that turned out to be the install button. It stretched all the way across the screen of the phone, and it didn't look like a button at all to me. So so it's interesting that several months ago we had said we need a success criteria that says that the triggers should be distinguishable, so the elements that trigger changes, like an install, should be sufficiently distinct to be clearly distinguishable from non-actionable elements, like a heading. So again, this is one we haven't done a lot of work on yet, but I now have a use case. Boy, do I have a use case.
So the last success criteria that we're looking at, and we may add some additional ones to this, but this is the last one that we've really identified that we're currently working on, has to do about making sure that content doesn't interfere with the default functionality of the platform level assistive technology. Again, we're talking about the assistive technology that's built into the actual platform, so on the mobile device, so on iOS or on Android or on some other device, making sure that we're not going to interfere with those platform level assistive technologies. So we want to make sure that the characteristics of the platform, whether that be zoom, larger font, captions, are available when and are honored by the website or the application when those settings are set or when that technology is being used. So this is one that we haven't worked through all of the details yet, but it is something that's very important because mobile overall allows you to personalize your device and your settings, and we want to make sure that users can take advantage of the functionality that is available by a particular device. So I want to give you just a few links so you can go and check out what we're currently working on. We have everything up in GitHub. Jeanne's going to tweet out these links. What we're doing right now is we've got it's still called the Mobile Accessibility Extension. This has got all of those items that we just talked about. And you can go in there. We update this on a weekly. Our meetings are Thursday at 11 o'clock Eastern. So in a couple hours, we'll be working on it. And as we're working through, we update this. So this changes on a weekly basis. And it is really a working document. It is a draft. It's not something that has been approved by the working group, but it is the work that we're currently doing. If you have comments, if you've got suggestions, we'd love to hear it. We're looking for input, and you can submit issues through GitHub. And we also have our wiki. The wiki has got a lot of background information and research that we've collected. For example, Jeanne was talking about touch and pointer. We've done a lot of research. We've talked to a lot of groups. We've talked to people who've done usability testing with users with disabilities and what their findings are. All of that research, all of the conversations that we've had are actually documented on our wiki, and we felt that this was really important because we've had a lot of conversations about, you know, what's important for mobile, why is this important, what's the user's need, you know, what really should we be requiring, and a lot of this is new. For example, if you're talking about, we mentioned the pixel sizes. We had weeks and weeks of conversations about what that should be. Should we go to points? Should we go to DPI? What should we do with pixels? What does this actually mean? All of that information we've actually documented on our wiki. So if you're interested in getting more information about why we've done something, how we've done it, you know, what was the research that we looked at in this, you know, where we're getting user stories from users and user needs, all of that is there. We've also taken a look at the other mobile accessibility guidelines through BBC, FunkNew. All of those we've looked at quite a while ago, but we looked at that to really inform a lot of what we were doing to look at, so we were taking consideration everything that everybody was doing.
And we should wrap this up quickly, Kathy. We're running out of time.
Okay, so the next steps for us is really we've got the touch and pointer out for the comment. We've completed we're going to be completing the techniques for touch and pointer once we get the feedback back. We are looking at starting work for the guidelines for the physical device, device orientation, and speech input. And we're currently coordinating with the other task force, because just because we're looking at mobile specifically doesn't mean that there's not things that we need to be thinking about in conjunction for users with low vision or users with cognitive. So we are coordinating with those task forces as well. The next steps really for you are to help us comment on what we're doing. We really do want to get the feedback. We are listening to all comments that come in. You can either email us on the public mailing list, or you can submit those through GitHub. Also, if you've got expertise in mobile and would like to share your expertise and join us in our efforts, you know, this is an open invitation to join the task force as well. So with that, Patrick, I'll turn it back to you for any questions that have come in.
Well, thank you very much. I'm just having a look over the Twitters here. I think you got away lightly. I don't think there's any questions that I can see at the moment, except for me reiterating the pixel sizes, and that we would love feedback on that. Right, in that case, I think all that's left to say is thank you very much to both of you. And all the kids at home, we're going to have a short 15-minute break or so, and then we're going to carry on with the next presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.